Creatine is literally one of the most talked about supplements right now, especially for your brain health. You've probably heard it being hyped up for cognitive performance, energy levels, and even mood, but does it actually live up to the claims, or is this just another trend? Well, today I'm going to break it all down. We're going to talk about the science, the benefits, the potential drawbacks, and of course, my personal experience using creatine, because I do use it every day, not just for physical performance, but also for my brain health. Before we get started, I do just want to give it a little disclaimer. This video is for informational purposes only. It's not intended to provide medical advice, any sort of diagnosis or treatment, and you should always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new supplement, especially if you have underlying health conditions or are pregnant or breastfeeding. And the information that I'm about to share is based on current research and my personal experience, but keep in mind that individual results with supplements always vary. By the end of this video, you will know whether creatine is something that you should consider for optimizing your energy, focus, and your well-being. So let's dive in. So first things first, let's actually talk about what creatine is, especially if you've never heard of it. So at its core, creatine is a compound that's made from 3 amino acids. Amino acids come from foods that are high in protein, and the amino acids that make up creatine are arginine, glycine, and methionine. Your body does naturally produce creatine mainly in the liver, and then some of it's also made in the kidneys and pancreas. And creatine's main role is in energy production in your body. It essentially acts as a storage system for high energy phosphate groups, which it donates to ADP, also known as adenosine diphosphate, and to regenerate it back into ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. And ATP is the body's primary energy carrier. Okay, you might have zoned out there. So why does this even matter? This matters because ATP is what fuels every single cell in your body and in your brain. So when ATP gets used up, it breaks down into ADP and AMP. And here's where creatine steps in. It donates a phosphate group to quickly recycle that ADP back into ATP. This process literally happens in every cell of your body, including your brain and nervous system, which require a constant supply of energy. This is why creatine has the potential to not just enhance muscle performance, but also cognitive performance. Like, think about it like this. Every time your body is under high energy demand, whether that's an intense workout, a stressful day at work, or just trying to push through brain fog, creatine is there to recharge your energy levels. So where do we get creatine from? The main sources of creatine are meat and fish, but here's where it gets a little interesting. On average, men get about 1.1 grams of creatine from their food every day, while women get even less, so around 0.6 grams per day. And that's because creatine is primarily found in animal products, so like chicken. Chicken has about 3.4 grams per kilogram, beef has about 4.5 grams per kilogram, pork has about 1.5 grams per kilogram. And for my vegetarian and vegan friends, it's basically non-existent in plant-based foods. That's why supplementing with creatine can be such a game changer, especially if you're not getting enough through diet. So what are the actual benefits of creatine? Let's start with the most well-known ones. When it comes to your physical performance, creatine has been shown to boost energy and power output, especially during resistance exercise. Creatine's been shown to help older adults maintain muscle mass. Creatine helps to improve strength, anaerobic performance, and it reduces body fat in trained athletes. And now let's get to the brain benefits. When it comes to cognition and mental health, creatine has been shown to reduce mental fatigue, especially in high stress scenarios like sleep deprivation or extreme physical exertion. It's been shown to improve memory, particularly in people with below average creatine levels like vegetarians, older adults, or those under chronic stress. It may also help with depression and bipolar disorder by influencing dopamine and serotonin pathways. And this is huge. If you're someone who pushes yourself hard, whether that's in your workouts, your careers, or just keeping up with life, creatine could be one of the easiest ways to optimize your energy and brain function. Now, my favorite part, let's actually break down the science. What does the research actually say about creatine and its impact on brain performance? So these are real studies we're going to look at with fascinating insights into how this simple compound can enhance cognition, mood, and mental resilience. One of the most compelling studies that we're going to start with first looked at creatine supplementation as an add-on therapy for depression. And this study was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, which means that neither the participants or the researchers knew who was taking the creatine versus the placebo, making the results most reliable. This is one of the highest and best forms of studies that you can do. The participants were all undergoing cognitive behavioral therapies, which is one of the most effective treatments for depression. So half of the group took 5 grams of creatine monohydrate daily, while the other half took a placebo. They all attended 45-minute cognitive behavioral therapy sessions over 8 weeks. They did a total of 5 sessions. And what were the results? Those who supplemented with creatine significantly saw greater improvements in their depression symptoms compared to those who didn't. And why is that? What's actually happening? So creatine does a lot behind the scenes. It boosts dopamine and serotonin. Those are the neurotransmitters responsible for motivation, happiness, and emotional stability. It helps to reduce oxidative stress. Oxidative damage is linked to brain fog, fatigue, and even neurodegenerative diseases. It increases something called the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So I want you to think of BDNF as the brain's fertilizer. It helps to grow new neurons, strengthen existing ones, and it plays a huge role in mental resilience and cognitive health. And what's the ultimate takeaway from this study? This study suggests that creatine isn't just about muscle recovery. It can actually enhance the effectiveness of therapy for depression by supporting brain energy metabolism and neurotransmitter function. And while this study was conducted in an under-resourced area, so where people may have had nutritional deficiencies, it raises an interesting question. Can creatine supplementation help anyone struggling with low energy, mental fatigue, or mood disorders? The next study that we are going to look at is a systematic review that looked at how creatine affected cognitive function in healthy people. So we don't really study healthy people. Usually studies are based off of people who are diagnosed with an illness and they need the appropriate support. Here's what the study ultimately found. It found that if you are young, well-nourished, and not really under much stress, creatine doesn't do much for your cognitive performance. To be honest with you, I don't know any young person who is well-nourished and not under stress, so they could probably all use creatine. On the other hand, what the study found is that if you are aging, stressed, or sleep deprived, creatine can dramatically improve memory, focus, and mental clarity. And why did the study find this information? So creatine's benefits are not universal. They depend on how much creatine is already in your brain. So your brain's creatine uptake is dependent on your baseline creatine levels. So if you already have high creatine levels, supplementation won't make much of a difference. However, if your creatine levels are low due to diet, stress, aging, or high mental demands, then supplementation can fill in the extra gap and provide that extra energy boost. And who really benefits the most? Vegetarians and vegans. Since they get little to no creatine from their diet, they can see the biggest improvements in memory, reasoning, and overall cognition. Older adults are also benefit from it because creatine can reverse mitochondrial dysfunction, which is a key factor in age-related cognitive decline. And people under chronic stress, so whether that's from work, sleep deprivation, or mental burnout, creatine helps to replenish those ATP, remember that thing that helps us build energy. It helps to replenish those ATP stores in the brain, and it helps to keep energy levels stable. The key takeaway from this study is that if you're a young, well-rested person who's eating a high protein diet, you probably won't see a huge boost in terms of your cognition with creatine. But if you're someone who struggles with mental fatigue, memory issues, or energy crashes, creatine could be a huge game changer for your brain. The last study I'm going to talk about in this video has to do with creatine supplementation in women. And here's where it gets really interesting, because most creatine research has been done on men, especially in athletes, but recent studies are showing that women may actually benefit more from creatine supplementation due to hormonal fluctuations. So why do women tend to have lower creatine levels? Creatine metabolism is actually regulated by hormones, estrogen in particular. And estrogen actually plays a role in creatine storage and availability. So women naturally consume 70 to 80% less creatine than men because they tend to eat less red meat and fish. And in certain phases of life, like menstruation, that's not a phase of life, that's literally every single month, pregnancy, postpartum, and menopause, it can also create a higher demand for creatine. And what is creatine's role in female mental health? So women are actually twice as likely to experience depression than men, and research shows a strong correlation between creatine intake and mood regulation. So the frontal lobe, this area here, that controls mood, cognition, and memory, tends to have lower creatine stores in women, especially in those with depression. And in fact, adults in the lowest quartile of creatine intake had a 31% greater risk of depression. When women supplement with creatine, it can actually support a pro-energetic environment in the brain, which can prevent mental fatigue. Supporting a pro-energetic environment in the brain essentially means that you're making sure that the brain cells have a steady and efficient supply of energy, which is crucial for preventing mental fatigue and maintaining focus and memory and cognitive function. And since the brain is a high energy demanding organ, creatine helps to recycle that ATP, so the molecule that fuels cellular activity, and allows neurons to function optimally, especially under stress and sleep deprivation or high cognitive demand. So by maintaining stable energy production, creatine helps to keep the brain sharp, resilient, and less prone to exhaustion. It also enhances dopamine and serotonin pathways, which are crucial for emotional stability. It provides extra energy during high stress phases like pregnancy and menopause. And essentially, the takeaway here is that women's cognitive and emotional health is deeply tied to energy metabolism. Because of hormonal shifts, women may actually need more creatine than men, yet they typically get less from their diet. This is a major missing piece in both mental health and women's health research. Could creatine be an easy, low-cost intervention for women struggling with mental fatigue, mood swings, or postpartum depression? The research suggests yeah, it can be. Now, let's talk about some of the safeties and drawbacks. So you might be wondering, is creatine actually safe? And the answer is yes, for most people. Always, right? Things can be different based on what other health conditions you have, what other medications you're taking. And the real side effects of creatine are potential water retention, and it can cause about mild weight gain because of that. So usually about 1 to 2 kilograms, and then occasional stomach discomfort if you take too much. I have definitely felt that initially when I've taken it, and it's not pleasant. It just feels like nauseous, and your stomach feels a little uncomfortable. And some people I know are also worried about creatine damaging the kidneys, but that isn't the case. If you already have kidney disease, your case might be a little bit different. Remember, so always talk to a healthcare professional before you decide to take anything, but creatine is not necessarily dangerous for your kidneys. It's also important to note that if you stop taking creatine, your levels will slowly return to baseline after about 4 weeks. You won't really have any withdrawal or crash symptoms. And I mean, in a way, this makes sense, right? Like once you stop taking something, and if you aren't already having enough in your diet, which I can promise you, you're probably not, then your body will essentially have less of that compound. So if you're thinking about trying creatine, here are the ways that research suggests you can take it. There's 2 ways of doing it. You can either do a loading phase. So doing it with a loading phase, you will notice the effects of creatine sooner, or you can take a small dose and then just maintain that dose. This does take a few weeks longer. So the loading phase works by you taking about 0.3 grams per kilogram body weight for 5 to 7 days for the faster effects, and then you go down to a maintenance dose of 3 to 5 grams per day. And again, to be honest with you, I just couldn't do the loading phase. I was way too sensitive to it. I got so nauseous. So I just started off by doing a maintenance dose of about 2.5 to 3 grams per day. And I might go up to 5 grams per day. But to notice the effects of creatine, it can take up to 3 to 4 weeks if you just start with the maintenance dose, versus if you do a loading phase, you can notice the effects faster in about 1 to 2 weeks. So personally, I love creatine. I take my maintenance dose every single morning. You also have to make sure to drink lots and lots of water with it. And I noticed that when I did do that, my stomach discomfort went down significantly. And honestly, I noticed a huge boost in my energy and workout performance. And sometimes if I'm going through stressful periods, I'll take another 2.5 grams later in the day. I also do my workouts in the morning, so this ends up working out great for me. Taking it closer to workout times can increase the positive effects, but the research on that is mixed a little bit. Let's tie this all back together, and here are my final thoughts on what this actually means for you. If there's one thing that all of these studies show is that creatine is not just like a gym bro supplement. It's a brain boosting, energy enhancing, mood regulating powerhouse that can benefit people with depression or mood disorders, vegetarians or vegans, or those with a low dietary creatine intake, aging adults experiencing a memory decline, stressed or deprived individuals, and women, particularly during pregnancy, postpartum, or menopause. So, should you take creatine? If you want more energy, mental clarity, and resilience, this might be one of the simplest, most effective things that you can add to your daily routine. And if you're looking for a step-by-step guide to optimizing your brain health and unlocking your next level of success, be sure to check out my Brain Max Masterclass. In it, I break down the key strategies to boost focus, energy, and mental resilience so that you can perform at your absolute best. Whether it's in your career, workouts, or daily routine, you can find the link in the description below. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What supplements do you want me to cover next? Drop a comment below and let's keep this conversation going. And if you found this video to be helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.